Ponce, and followed by Robin Rudisill.
I am so pleased that you had these pictures. So it depicts actually what is happening to brooks. For every demolition that's made and everything that's decided here, the demolitions, that's actually they're going to be brooks, the future of brooks from Lincoln to Abercrombie, easily. Those projects actually fit. They fit Mildred. The entire block, as far as tall, as far as the size. However, I pose one question for the designer, the developer, the owner, and even the commission. At what point do we start calling these small /tall sublot divisions? Because there's really nothing small about them. I mean, by measure, by square footage, perhaps, but these things are monoliths. They're huge, and they take up the sky, and they take up the skylight. You've heard this all before, but thank you for your time. I just wanted to pose that question. When do we start referring them to small/tall sublot divisions?
Thank you. Lydia, could you just state your name for the record? We liked that before. Thank you.
Lydia Ponce.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Robin Rudisill, giving some thoughts as a Venice stakeholder. My main concern is this. Venice is known for its diversity of architecture, and that's something that needs to be protected. And in a lot of the local NC hearings, we're challenging architects to make sure that we maintain that diversity. And I know some are trying to save money by designing a project and putting it in several places, but to the extent those places are close to each other, we're strongly discouraging that. And lastly, I just wanted to address the potential for a cumulative adverse effect. This north side of Mildred, I think it's in Exhibit 4. This project is compatible with that area. It's true, but it's very interesting because it's a one long block all the way from Ocean to Washington of fairly solid, maxed out mass. And it's kind of like what we worry about when we think about Oakwood and the impact of these larger mass projects that a lot of citizens are upset about. And you can kind of see it here in the exhibit as well. And so that's maybe a sign of what the future could be in terms of that adverse impact and what it might look like. And I hope we'll consider whether we can sustain this over time and how we can prevent that from expanding into the other blocks of the neighborhood. I think it's there, it's done. Let's not let it spread. And this project is basically filling in where it already is, so I'm okay with it, the compatibility from that standpoint. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Okay, so we'll come back to the staff.
No comments.
No comments. So then we'll come to Commissioner Bochco.
Yes. I move that Commission approve Coastal Development Permit number 5140288 pursuant to the staff recommendation, and I'm asking for a yes vote.
Motion and a second. Would you like to speak to your motion?
I think I'd like to speak after we make, there's 4 of the similar motions. I might as well make them, if that's all right.
Okay. And to the second? No? Okay. Any further commissioner comments? Any unwillingness for unanimous yes vote on this? Seeing none. Do you want to go now? Yeah, Commissioner Vargas, please.
I'm inclined to go along, but I'll give my 2 cents ahead, and you, Dana, you can give your 2 cents after. I mean, this is really, really frustrating and challenging for me. Just Venice in general. Now that we have these de minimis waivers coming to us, I'm at least becoming more and more aware of the volume of applications that are coming to us from Venice. And if you look at something on an individual case-by-case basis, you can say that it fits the rules and it fits the guidelines and we should approve it, and that makes sense. But if you look at the sheer volume of permits that are coming through, changing single-story bungalow homes that are in the hundreds of square feet, not thousands of square feet, in size into multiple thousand square foot multi-level homes, and at the volume and at the rate that it's occurring, how do you not say that that's serious, dynamic, rapid gentrification, serious, rapid, dynamic change of community, of a community's character? And I'm frustrated and I don't know what to do. And so I'm giving my 2 cents because I don't see how I can not approve these because on face value, each one of them is fine. But as a whole, we need to do something. And I'm looking at staff, and maybe you can give your 2 cents after we approve them all. But clearly to me, and I hope I'm not the only one on the commission that feels this way. Clearly to me, this is a signal of a clarion call that if we don't do something in the next year and a half, go ahead and read the articles about real estate in Venice. The time to act is now, and I hope we can do something, whether it be a workshop or a tour of Venice, like our great Venice residents that keep coming to visit say that we should do. We should take them up on their offer and really take a look at that. Thanks.
Thank you. I think Commissioner Bochco would like to speak at this point, followed by Commissioner Zimmer.
Yes, thank you. And I'm actually inspired by Commissioner Vargas because I feel absolutely the same way, and Jack knows this. I mean, we have all met with the councilman, we've met with other members of the city planning office, we've all tried very hard to cure the situation so that the citizens of Venice have an opportunity to weigh in on what they would like their community to look like. I even went so far to ask, could they become a city? And I found that that's very hard to do. So I would like, Jack, I know you reviewed really briefly kind of the status of those meetings, but could you enlighten us as far as possible of, is there a plan in place that you think might be able to be achieved over, let's call it a year and a half time, where we might be able to have the city address this community character idea? You know, because I agree. I mean, these are 4 very large houses who, you know, whether you like that kind of architecture or not, it's really becoming the 3-story Venice place. I mean, city, it's not even a city, but you know what I mean? It's just, and I don't know that there's anything the Coastal Commission could ever do to preserve small bungalows. You know, all beach cities now are becoming much, much more expensive, and people who buy small lots that paid a lot of money want big houses. I mean, I understand that. That's the reality. But at least to be able to say, you know, this neighborhood, this particular area of Venice has a certain character that an architect's going to have to start paying attention to. Are we anywhere, do you think, on a plan that might take place or mature in the next year and a half?
That's a challenge. And the reason that's a challenge is because the solution is the LCP. That is the solution to determine what the vision for Venice is. And you're right, Venice there are different areas in Venice of different styles and designs of houses. There are some areas that are still that bungalow craftsman style. And there's others like Mildred Avenue here that's all pretty much built out. And so that's a challenge, and there's those different contexts. With regard to the process itself, what we were trying to set up with the councilman's office and with planning is to come up with at least a process at the city where these homes are reviewed, these permit applications are reviewed through the community council. There is input from the stakeholders there, the members of the community, to determine what is the vision for that particular area and for each individual home. So we thought if we could get at least that process in place, and any revisions that may come out of that process, the city staff could then make or suggest to the applicant. And if they make those changes, then we thought, well, okay, then that could qualify as a waiver if you have that consensus. The problem that you're going to have is that you'll never get full consensus in Venice. It's just too eclectic. I mean, it's too many varied opinions of what it should look like and what is the vision there. We have a plan in place right now. It's the Venice LUP that was approved back in, 2001, I think it was, that laid out a vision for Venice. It established all these height limits, and what you're seeing is everyone building out to the maximum height limits and, side yard setbacks, what have you, because of the property values there and the gentrification that's occurring. Now, as Charles had mentioned, up in Carmel, the approach we took there, and in order to preserve those small bungalows and that character of that community, we started denying those permit applications and said, look, they're going to prejudice the ability to prepare an LCP. That is an option, but I'm not sure if you're prepared to go there. So.
And let me just add, we had a discussion of this when we first heard these waivers, and we pulled the waivers off the agenda and started this loop. Specifically to your question, Commissioner Vargas, we did start making findings that to approve a particular demolition and rebuild in the city of Carmel would prejudice the LCP, and that's a specific requirement in the Coastal Act that we used routinely in the early days because we were trying to get LCPs done, and it wasn't a moratorium, but the commission effectively was saying, wait, we don't want to approve these things until we know what the overall plan is. And that is an option. And in Carmel, one of the primary issues was historic preservation and the character of the small cottages. If you've been to Carmel, you know what that means. But it was also scale and design and architectural features. And the commission did certify an LCP that limited, among other things, included a square footage limitation on the size of the homes. 1,800 square feet is the limit in Carmel. And you can do those kinds of things as it relates to character. So if the commission believed that there was something special about neighborhoods, maybe even specific neighborhoods within Venice or Venice itself that spoke to the size of homes and character, you could do those kinds of policies and standards under your Coastal Act Authority 30253. There were many other aspects of the Carmel LCP also, but it wasn't until the LCP got certified then that the market freed up again and development proceeded under the new standards that you had certified. One of the primary issues that was discussed at that hearing was the scale issue, and the commission landed at 1,800 square feet. In that case, I'm not saying that's the answer here. But.
Well, pursuant to that, because I think that's really interesting. That's very interesting. Would we be going up against perhaps a legal pushback because the LUP has the standard that we've been imposing, which is this maximum that everyone keeps building? Or is that it's still just totally in our discretion?
Well, the LCP isn't completely certified. You have an LUP. So we are still reviewing these under the Coastal Act, and the LUP is advisory, but I think you could certainly find that the certified LCP is potentially prejudiced by an approval or a certain kind of approval. But as Jack said, the LUP was approved in 2000, thereabouts. I think what you'd be observing, as Commissioner Vargas suggested, is that there's a lot going on now in the marketplace and a lot of rapid change that wasn't going on when that LUP was under consideration, and so you'd be wanting the staff to look more closely at what is going on, what are the kinds of changes, what sorts of options would there be to consider what the character is, and more importantly, because it, as Jack said, it's really tied to the LCP, we would want that to kind of bubble up from Venice and the city as to what is their proposal for the LCP to address this question. That's the place where this local conversation, whether or not consensus can be reached or not, where you should first look for the notion of what is Venice's community character that you're trying to protect.
So if there's an opportunity, I'm just doing a hypothetical now. Hypothetically, we could say to, let's say, the next permit applicant that we would like to see like photographs of the neighborhood, not just the two houses on either side, and perhaps, a certain whatever you could call community character. It's not just the street you're on isn't necessarily community character. I mean, maybe we could start looking at it a little more deeply and say, well, okay, you know, this house is really out of character for this particular section of Venice. And I know that's really difficult for us. I mean, you know, we don't have, I mean, if we were standing in Venice and doing a site tour, I suppose we could figure it out. But I'm just thinking maybe there is a little more to the community character idea that we can start analyzing in some of these cases. Because I know a lot of the cases come in and the houses are, you know, just like the new houses that were built, you know, 5-6 years ago.
Jack probably wants to.
Yeah, I have. You have to remember, in Venice, we have a dual permit system.
Yeah.
So in the single permit area, which is the vast majority of Venice, the city, the way it's set up is the city should be processing these permits, applying the Coastal Act and LUP as guidance. So it's their responsibility to do this. This whole waiver thing came up as a means of making that a more efficient process. That is part of the ordinance that allows the executive director, if it's a very minor development, they could come directly to us, we could waive the commission, and we waive the permit requirements. Well, everyone has gotten used to that system, and so now that's been all set aside, and it's causing all this angst and from the developers or the development side of the equation. So it's the city's responsibility to address this through this coastal development process. The suggestions you make with regard to what defines a community character, those ideas should be presented at the city hearing on these matters. The issue that the development community and Robin Rudisill has suggested this hybrid approach, and she's been very helpful. So thank you, Robin. With regard to this whole idea, so it's really the city's responsibility to come up with a strategy here. Otherwise, what will happen? Our only way to deal with this, let's say the city approves a project we don't think is in character with the area, then we would appeal the permit. It would come to us, and we'd have to deal with the permit.
Thank you.
It's complicated.
And I would just add, it wouldn't be the first time that the commission had asked for that more extensive analysis of a neighborhood character. We've done that before. It is very difficult, you're right. And in a case like this, it's challenging on a case-by-case basis to do that. It's very intensive work. In this case, the city would be the lead on that, but that's why the LCP really is the important mechanism here, to deal with it once and for all at the planning level and agree on the standards that we think protect the community character.
Good. Commissioner Zimmer, then Commissioner Mitchell.
Thank you. We've been having this conversation periodically now for it feels like a couple of years, way before we took the stand that there should be no more de minimis waivers. And I'm recalling that in the beginning, we had numerous people from Venice coming to us to ask for help under the Coastal Act, under our authority. And it seemed like the only two ways we could help would be to look at cumulative impacts and to look at community character. I think it was clear from the beginning that if what we're talking about with respect to gentrification is in fact not just a change in style, but in the loss of affordable housing, which I think is a concern of a lot of us individually on the commission, but is not legally within our ability to regulate. So I'm feeling frustrated, not at anybody, because everybody's been trying various strategies, but frustrated with the situation. And I feel like there has to be a point at which the commission comes to grips with what is and is not within our power to do to help this situation. And you quite rightly keep referring us back to the fact that ultimately this is the city's responsibility in terms of developing a plan. But now I'm hearing, again, quite correctly, Commissioner Vargas's growing sense of frustration and urgency given the volume of demolition and redevelopment applications that keep coming in, that by the time the city gets it together to bubble up a plan to us, it will be, the city will be transformed. All the horses will have left the barn. This new suggestion, I'm calling it new because I'm hearing it today, maybe more emphatically, about making findings that it would prejudice the LCP to approve these individual permits. I think is again kind of dissimulating in terms of, it's just another way of saying the city needs to find a way to stop and think and develop its own plan. And they have the legal authority to do that if they have the political will to do it. And that is a planning moratorium. So I don't think it's appropriate for us to try to effectively impose a planning moratorium through this finding that it will prejudice LCP approval. That doesn't feel right to me in terms of how we're treating the applicants. They're being whipsawed back and forth, and every other month when we come up with a different tactic, we're hurting another group of people or impairing their expectations in terms of what they thought the process was. So I think that I would hope that our message back to the city and to their constituents would be, you need to come to grips with whether you want to stop this activity while you make a plan, both as to the character of the community and as to the issues of affordability, because that is also within the city's purview to look at the loss of affordable. And they have a system, and they need to figure out whether that system is adequately serving them, and take action, because it appears from the testimony we get that it isn't serving the community. So I'm going to support this application because I don't think we should take another U-turn on the back of this applicant. But I think the message as one commissioner, my message would be, look, people of Venice, there are limitations on what we can do for you, and we can't just keep loading our staff up with more and more work to try and fill these gaps that ultimately aren't going to be effectively filled. Thank you.
Commissioner Zimmer, maybe I just can observe that I think my understanding is this permit is the last in the group like this that would actually be coming to you as permits, and now we are back in this place where we are asking the city to take the first bite of the coastal permit. And so we are at a bit of a transition point with what kinds of things you might see. I agree with you that there's definitely a political will dimension to this problem, and in fact I've often thought that the reason we finally got a submittal on the LCP for Carmel was once the commission said, you know what, there's just too much cumulative change to community character going on here, and it's a problem from a statewide perspective, and we are going to say we're not going to approve these anymore until we get the LCP. Or that's effectively the message that was sent, and that is a valid role for you to take if you would like. In this case, I think we're going to be in the box where these are going to be going to the city, and as Jack said, are potentially appealable to us, and we can certainly convey to the city that if it's the Commission's desire that they deal with this question at the local level as expeditiously as possible through the LCP. It's always a potential that permits would be appealed to us based on community character concerns. So you may be in this position again, but and I'm not saying don't act today to approve on the staff recommendation here, because maybe in the specific case you don't see the same kind of specific concern with character on this project. But it is an important role that you play always when considering, and as I said, in the early days, that was your role, to make sure that the statewide concerns from a planning perspective were being addressed and that you weren't letting incremental decisions undermine the cumulative outcome.
Thank you. Commissioner Mitchell?
So this is obviously very frustrating for everyone involved, including us. And I agree with Commissioner Zimmer's comments, honestly. I mean, the issue is that we have these permits, people come and testify, and we're like chasing our tail trying to come up with a policy to solve this problem when it's really not in our jurisdiction to solve this problem in the first place. So either we need to, have a workshop or some sort of discussion on the policy of how we're going with this, or we push it back to the city and say the city needs to deal with it and more review there and through their LCP process. But having this, each individual come up and, then we say, oh, we want to change this and we want to change that. That's not how public policy should be. We can disagree with the LUP that says you can build the 3,000 square feet, et cetera, but that's the policy that people are going under. So if they're following the rules of the current policy and we're changing that policy month to month at the Coastal Commission, I don't think that's not a position I want to be in as a policymaker. And because we're not making policy, we're just changing the rules constantly. So I think we need to make a decision about how we're going to address this globally as a commission and put that on the agenda and take a vote and decide what we're going to do with regard to the Venice LCP, because this has been going on for years now, and with no change. This was raised when we had the LCP funding discussion. I think it was here a year ago. So it's very frustrating that commissioners are asked month after month to, flip on a policy and not have a holistic conversation about what we're doing in this region, instead of each individual developer like, well, who knows what mood the commissioners are going to be in today based on this project, we could kill it or not. That's not how government is supposed to work. We're supposed to set the rules, they meet the rules. If we don't like the rules, we can change the rules. We do that through notice, through a public process, and have a policy discussion. We don't do it with every individual homeowner has a different set of rules. So I am going to be supporting the motion for this project because, again, it shouldn't be done on the back of this individual. This is an important public policy. Let's address it like adults in an appropriate way and not keep moving the ball.
Thank you. We now have we're on the first of the four. Oh, yes, Commissioner Turnbull Sanders, excuse me.
Thank you, Chair Kinsey. I too have been frustrated with this process, and one of the things I thought we might do is perhaps send another letter to the city as well, talking about the Commission's frustration with this process. I don't know what good that will do, but it seems like there has to be some kind of force behind our decision. And what Commissioner Mitchell said about developing some sort of policy, if there's a way maybe to discuss this at our next commission meeting and report back on what the result was from whatever letter we might send to the city, discussing the commissioner's frustration with the process, and that we may ultimately at some point be in the position of upholding or withholding granting these de minimis waivers in the future. And I think it will create a terrible bottleneck, and I don't want to be in a position of kind of holding this over the city's head unnecessarily. But as Dr. Lester said, it really forced the same issue, really forced Carmel to come to the table. And I'm wondering if some sort of letter, some sort of strong stance on the Commission's part, stating to the city that we may be in a position of having to reject these de minimis waivers in the future might be helpful. And I'm not sure if it will, but I thought maybe perhaps, Jack, you could address that, or Dr. Lester, if you think that might be something that could be an option, perhaps you could speak to that.
Yeah, so we could certainly follow up again. I understand we did send a letter, and Jack's been in some meetings, but I'd be happy to draft another strongly worded letter and make personal contact with the city as well on this question and just see where they are and where do we think we're going on the prospects for a policy discussion at the local level on this question. So I have no idea whether it would have an effect.
I think the challenge is, you know, we've been talking about this for a long time, and it just would be helpful to have some indication of some sort of movement.
I agree. And perhaps within the context of the LCP program, we can get some sense of the schedule and commitments to bringing that to the Commission. We can also check in on the status of pending applications at the local level, which will now be getting CDPs from the city, not from us, and see what kind of space is in there to deal with this before the Commission may need to confront this kind of question again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Howell?
Thank you. I actually think we've gotten our answer from the city. I think their answer is we don't care, or even worse, this is exactly what we want. And I think that we really should just agendize it and decide whether or not this is a fight the Commission wants to have, or if we do think that it's beyond our purview to take any action on this.
Thank you. Okay. Commissioner Mitchell.
Yeah, so I would request that on our next agenda that we agendize our policy related to Venice, so we can have a discussion, give everyone the heads up that we're going to have a discussion about that, and we could get input. So
just a thought, our next agenda is in Crescent City, about as far away as you can get from Venice.
Even better.
There you go. You must be from L.A.
Right. No, I'm joking. So, well, the following month then...
We are relatively close. We're in Orange County.
I would like to see that on the agenda, and if that isn't possible, I would like to see an item on the agenda to discuss how we put items on the agenda.
Sure.
How individual commissioners can.
Let me just ask Dr. Lester and Jack, the thought of having a policy conversation about this in a couple months, is that realistic?
Well, it's partly that I don't think it's realistic, but I'm also not sure what it is we would be doing within our legal authority. So if the Commission wants to have a discussion that would result in some sort of conclusions about what do we think the community character is, our policy, that entails a comprehensive analysis of the community character of Venice, a lot of analysis being developed to bring forward to you the information you might want to consider whether or not certain styles and scales of development are appropriate or not. And that's exactly the kind of work you would do through the LCP process. Now, I suppose we could consider at the staff level independently pursuing a workshop on that question for you to consider, and hopefully the city would be a participant in that. And I agree that if you were to do something like that, it would probably be important to have it in a place where the community could be involved in it to help with that discussion.
That was certainly my intention.
And so you could certainly
disagrees with that.
Pursue that, but I just have to say that it's going to work directly at cross purposes with all the other work we have going on, such as a workshop on lower cost visitor serving. And so, my recommendation would be to check in with the city again on where they are and what the actual likelihood of having some kind of LCP policy development move forward in the near term. And on the theory that we aren't going to be seeing any specific projects in front of us now in the near term, unless an appeal is filed of a local CDP, maybe there's a little space in there for us to figure out what is happening locally and the best way to proceed. And then if it seems like that's not going to pan out, maybe by that time we would have the staff capacity to pursue this kind of a discussion also sometime, later in the year or in the new year. I just don't see how we, right now, with Jack's staff and some of the questions that we deal with that issue in that way, in a way that's going to help you. It really would need to be I think, a fairly developed discussion to arrive at some guidance, and that's the last piece, which is, you really can't adopt a policy in the sense of a regulation. We could certainly bring forward some ideas and get some sense of the commission for guidance to the local government on what they should be doing in their LCP, and that would effectively serve as guidance to the development community also. These are the kinds of things we're looking for in individual development projects.
Thank you. Commissioner McClure, then Commissioner Zimmer, then Commissioner Vargas.
Yes, thank you. I too agree that it's extremely frustrating that we see this happening in Venice, and the authority that should be assisting the community is turning a blind eye to that community. And whatever reason they have for not having a LCP for the neighborhood, or not making sure that the local neighborhood committees have input on this process, that's what I think that we're trying to say. That's it. That's where the train wreck is going to stop. There has to be something. There has to be some kind of engagement in the community. And I think that is what I would be asking for, is the directions of how did Carmel get there? Because if it means that we just say, that's it, Venice, until you want to come up with a community character plan and an analysis of your neighborhoods, don't put any more permits forward, because we're just going to have to find that we can't approve them since we don't have this information. And that, to me, is what we're trying to look forward to. I'm not ready to be the arbitrator or the referee in neighborhood discussions on what character is in Venice. But I am willing to say that as this body, we should be able to put the red light on and put the stop button on Venice and its authority and its powers that offer permits, and say, this is it. This level of confusion and this level of strife that's happening in your neighborhoods has got to stop, and we have to have a plan. If it's a community development plan outside of an LCP, so be it. But we need to have some kind of definition before we move forward. And that's the direction I would like to see staff give us in a future meeting, is how do we reach that? How do we allow Venice to have its own Carmel in relationship to its future?
Maybe I could also just add that LA has applied for an LCP grant, including Venice, I think, in the first instance. So we could also, we're in the middle of reviewing those grants, as I reported yesterday. Obviously, we need to look at the details and evaluate it, but that's maybe an opportunity for us to leverage some of these concerns you have about timing and proactiveness on the city's part.
And I just would like to make one more comment. It's not the councilman in that district is relatively new. He is committed to moving forward with an LCP, and he's working really hard to come up with the funding from the city side to support that. And he has come up with some funding to match the proposed grant. So it is a matter of political will to get these sorts of things figured out. He is pulled in different directions from the development side of things and from the activists in the area. So it's a tough place for him to be in. But he is stepping forward, and he is making that commitment. So I just wanted to say that he does care about this issue.
Okay. Commissioner Zimmer, then Vargas, then Mitchell.
I agree completely with Commissioner McClure's comments and the forcefulness with which he made them. Didn't I say McClure? Okay. Yes, the most recent comments made by Commissioner McClure, I agree with completely. I do want to say that I don't think we need a policy discussion. This isn't about us making policy. We know what the policy is. The policy is the Coastal Act, and we have been frustrated in implementing that policy for a number of reasons. Not to impugn the good intentions of the new council person, goodwill, attempts. The reality is that no matter how much money anyone were to throw at the LCP in LA, it's going to take years for them to go through the process they need to go through. And to go back again to the urgency in Commissioner Vargas's voice, what we need to do is figure out, and I don't think it's a difficult process to figure out. I think we just need to be told clearly what are our options. One option is to say to the City of LA, we've had enough evidence coming through on a case-by-case basis, enough concern with cumulative impacts that we haven't been able to address, that we haven't been able to get a handle on. If it's correct that the City of LA is not prepared in the interim, while no matter how much money they get, while they're doing their planning, if they're not prepared to say we need to stop demolitions while we're doing the planning, which they have the authority to do, then it seems like our only response to that would be to say, okay, based on the evidence that we have seen over the last couple of years, we need to start making the finding that individual applications coming to us are going to prejudice the preparation of that LCP. I don't think that requires a workshop. I think it requires, a simple statement of options and consequences, which we may not want to have today, but which we could have very soon. I don't think it's, Mr. Ainsworth is nodding that that's not the kind of burden on staff that we heard articulated. So I just want to be clear. We're not making policy. We're not making new policy. We're just trying to find a way to respond to a situation that we can't directly control.
Commissioner Vargas, then Mitchell.
Yeah, I think that's more or less in lines with what I'm thinking as well. I mean, the frustration here is that we don't have a lot. It seems to me we don't have a lot of tools in our toolbox, and the one tool that we have, which is this moratorium, is a very heavy-handed tool. Which is why I'm very reticent to just say stop all permitting. But it is an option, and we should consider it. And I think, I think to the comments that Commissioner Zimmer just gave, I think they're fairly consistent with the way I'm thinking on this. I think that a step maybe in between, maybe not a workshop, but it would serve us good. Maybe not in the Newport meeting, but in the next few months, when the opportunity is there, maybe we can schedule an opportunity to have a meeting in the LA area, or at least nearby. It would do us well to go and walk the neighborhood. The community groups are asking for it. I think at the very least it's a tool that we don't always use, but that can be helpful, which is raising the attention of this to the media. I'm sure a walking tour in that area will raise this issue and hopefully get city officials realizing that we're quite serious here.
Thank you. Commissioner Mitchell?
Just to close this out, I was using policy in that if we decide that our option is to, make the findings that this will impact the LCP and therefore we will not be approving any more permits, that is, in my mind, a policy. Maybe it's not the term of art that we're using here, but it is a statement. And that's what I'm trying to get at. That's what I think we should be having a conversation about. That's what I think should be agendized. However, it isn't, a lengthy staff review of the character of Venice. It's a 2-page, here are the options that we have. Here is what has happened. Here is what, and then the commission will decide how we want to take this. That then is agendized and put both the community of Venice on notice, the elected officials on notice, the planning on notice. They pay attention, and we can then have a substantive conversation. But I appreciate all these people coming, every month to our meeting, but we need to have more, I don't think everyone who actually has a stake in this has the opportunity to be here every month. So if we have an agenda item, that would be the appropriate way to notify everyone and have a discussion about our options. And if we then determine that our option is to, that approving any more permits will negatively impact the LCP, we won't be doing it. That is saying something. That's a position that the commission is taking. And I think that should be a discussion and not just when these permits come up. That was what I was getting at. I think it should be local. I think it should not require a great deal of staff time. I think it should be agendized appropriately at a meeting in the next Southern California meeting, so that this, train doesn't leave the station and, 2 years down the road, Venice is completely changed. And I would like to see that, and I would like not to have this as a discussion and for, as the executive director said, get a sense of where the commission is going, or, give guidance, et cetera, et cetera. We've done that. I don't want to give a sense. I want it to be on the agenda. I want there to be a discussion, and I want us to take a vote and decide what we're going to be doing with regard to these, not give a sense and then it's interpreted however down the road. I want to be clear about where we're going. So that's what I'm proposing, and I would like it not in Smith River, but at our following meeting. So this is August, September, October, if it's in Southern California, to do it then. And if it's not, if I can understand why.
Thank you. Commissioner Bochco?
Yes, I tend to agree with Commissioner Mitchell, but what I would ask, is it possible, because I know we had that meeting with all the cities and we talked about the LCPs and all that. Would it be possible to have the city officials who are involved with Jack come to this meeting and we say, here's our frustration, and if we actually refuse to give permits for development, that is a very, very serious I think it would be really hard on a lot of people who you don't want it to be hard on. It's one of those things we already found out, that when we made them come for full permits, how difficult it was on the people who just wanted to build a house. They weren't developers. They weren't trying to. So do you think, is it possible to have something like what Commissioner Mitchell is talking about, but with those people who may have an effect on this present, so that we can say, look, here's the options that you'll list for us, and then we'll say, we don't want to go with the nuclear option. We want to do what's right for our citizens, your citizens. And what is that? Can you develop even an interim process while the LCP is being worked on that allows these people a fair hearing? Thought.
I think what we should do is regroup and talk to legal about what our options would be for coming forward, and taking into consideration these comments about location and timing and the format. I agree you would want to do something that was clear. The only reason I hesitate a little bit is I'm not sure you want to frame it right now as a statement that we're not going to approve any permits, because I think there might be some legal issues there, and there may be ways to take an action that expresses your intentions that isn't a effective regulation about a certain kind of permit or application, as opposed to a statement about some issues and concerns and what you're expecting to be addressed. When the Commission has dealt with this over the years as a prejudicing of the LCP, that's always a finding that's made on an actual application in front of you based on the facts in front of you that you are applying the Coastal Act to. And so you need to make sure that you're making those kinds of effective denial decisions based on the facts in front of you. And so that's the only hesitation I have. We can certainly look at what we could bring to you for action or consideration, but we want to be careful how we frame that.
Okay. I think that we would like you to do that. I would ask that either, Charles, that either you or Jack send a communication to the city that just refers to this conversation that's been had at the commission, just to alert them to the fact that this is quite concerning to the commission, and then that you would confirm for us at next month's meeting whether you think there's a realistic agendized item for October. The next available time we have is January, but based on what I'm hearing, I did not hear commissioners asking for a deep and substantial analysis. And so I also heard you say you need to regroup and think about it. So what I would like you to do is to come back to us at our next month's meeting and report on what you think the timing for having that conversation as an agendized item would be, whether it be in October or if you have a rationale for postponing it until January, to give us that information at that time. And in the meantime, I think it is important that the city understand how concerning this is for the whole commission. And obviously, I agree that the folks in the community are concerned. You can also take into consideration Commissioner Vargas's suggestion that we either provide opportunity to have a field trip or to give us time within our an agenda. Within a meeting to be able to make a trek up there on our own. Okay? Thank you.
I would be happy to follow up on those things. Just on the field trip option, are you saying potentially provide time in the October window? January obviously could be an opportunity to do something.
I think January may be a better time to go than October, relative to the fact that we haven't identified our South Coast meeting.
Right.
We have the ability to make it even more available or easier to accomplish. And I don't think that the urgency is greater than that. Okay? Good. So we have a motion, believe it or not, and a second on the first of four items. And is there any unwillingness for a yes vote after all of that? Seeing none, we do approve that. And then Commissioner Bochco, if you could just move down those remaining items.
Yes, sir. I move that the Commission approve Coastal Development Permit number 514-0289 pursuant to the staff recommendation, and I'm recommending a yes vote.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
And a second. Any need to talk further? Seeing none, any unwillingness for a unanimous yes vote? Seeing none, next item, we approve that then and move to the next.
I move that the Commission approve Coastal Development Permit number 514-0290 pursuant to the staff recommendation and asking for a yes vote.
Second.
Thank you. Without discussion, any unwillingness for unanimous yes vote? Seeing none, we approve that application as well.
I move the Commission approve Coastal Development Permit number 514-0523 pursuant to the staff recommendation, asking for a yes vote.
Second.
Any unwillingness for unanimous yes vote? Seeing none, we also approve that item, and that completes the items from Venice Beach, which brings us, I believe, to the final.
Yes, item 24A, and hopefully this will be fast. These are the revised findings for